And that put so much wood on that fire.
One sentence was all it took to ignite chaos across the NBA world. A statement allegedly tied to Anthony Edwards calling Larry Bird unskilled. But what nobody expected was Michael Jordan stepping into the conversation in a way that instantly changed the tone. Now fans are split, legends are being dragged into debates again, and the truth feels buried under layers of noise. So what really triggered Jordan's reaction, and is there more to this story than anyone is admitting?
He looks around and goes, "What's up, Sal?" I said, "No." He goes, "You on me?" I said, "Yeah, I got size on you right now. I've been watching every move." He goes, "Y'all not double teaming?" And he's looking around. I go, "Nah, it's just me, fella." He goes, "Mouse in the house, mouse in the house." And they change the play, and he catches the ball. He does this, and he shoots it. He says, "Sal, you better ask for a double team, bro."
He was a quiet shit talker.
Yeah.
He would like go by you and say, "I'm going to hit this now."
Yeah.
I remember we were playing and Tom Tolbert was playing Larry and guarding him pretty well. Larry picked up the ball and he couldn't find no one. And Tolbert was all over it. He just turned around and launched it. And Tolbert say, "Off, that's off." He say, "Awful."
I don't think we give him enough credit
For how good he was.
for how great that dude was, man. Larry Bird was the real.
Larry Bird, one of the best basketball players of all time. Talked about you as being one of the best defenders ever. How do you feel hearing it from a guy like Larry Bird?
You know what? One of the things that we all know this, playing against your peers, you always want to be respected.
Right.
Larry Bird was one of the best trash talkers ever.
What started as a light, almost throwaway comment on a podcast quickly snowballed into something far bigger than anyone involved probably anticipated, pulling Anthony Edwards into a debate that now has the entire basketball world questioning how one opinion managed to ignite this level of controversy.
There are very few people that enjoy it the way you do. One of them is Michael Jordan. Now, Michael Jordan recently talked about how you being double teamed is a sign of respect.
Yeah.
You heard about that?
Yeah.
I talked to him yesterday, and we talked about you, and he said he loves his passion on both ends that you have. He said you need to continue improving on your game and accepting challenges and thriving.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows that you're the type of person that has that determination.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool to have, isn't it?
Like, are you kidding me? Larry Bird in this era? Are you kidding me?
That's
You know
what
what I mean?
that's what be
Oh, no,
boiling
it'd
my
been
blood.
rough.
But
It'd
people
been more
don't-
rough though.
For who?
For Larry. How?
And it starts.
What you mean?
How?
Just the physical
He's
capability.
6'10", dude.
That's a lot of
240.
6'10". Nah,
Okay.
it's a lot of that.
And
That's
he-
all
and
I'm
he-
saying. He birthed that. Don't
Larry
you?
Bird talking to you saying, "Yeah, I'm the best man, Indiana. Put a 3 under my ball." That's true.
It is very true. So, I look in the mirror, I'm like, well, I'm
What's
about to
happening?
get this fits out here. Before the game, I was over there rubbing my hands looking at him like, I'm about to get you.
A comment about Larry Bird being unskilled, paired with the idea that only Michael Jordan truly had real talent, sounded like typical modern-era confidence at first, the kind of bold talk fans scroll past without blinking. But the moment that clip started circulating, something shifted, and suddenly, the entire basketball world began reacting like someone had just rewound history and hit play on a long-forgotten argument that never really ended.
Best white player ever is Bird, right? And that's who has been the staple of white America since. It's been Bird. Then John Stockton falls behind that.
He never got to the point of a Bird, though. John Stockton?
No, so,
Yeah,
you
not
know,
even
but
close.
because
Bird,
of the
Bird was a beast.
But because of the MVPs
Yeah.
and stuff, but you're talking about that's really the last American white hero
in the NBA?
in the NBA, right? And from there, you've been trying to pull the Euros and hold claim to them.
What made it worse was how quickly the statement spread beyond social media debates and into conversations involving players who actually lived the eras being discussed. Legends were suddenly being dragged into a discussion they never asked to join, while younger fans tried to figure out whether this was disrespect, ignorance, confidence, or simply a badly framed opinion taken too far. And right in the middle of that noise,
Those are the types of conversations I try to have when players seek that information.
Do you see the players of today's basketball with that mindset to achieve greatness?
It's hard to be hungry when you have.
The one I really hated to guard was Larry Bird. He was not a nice guy. Matter of fact, there was one game in Cleveland where he was having a pretty rough first half.
Was Larry really telling you what he was about to do to you before he did? I've heard so many different stories. What type of trash talk was y'all getting from Larry Bird?
There were times where he would come out of a timeout. I remember this one time, you might have heard this before because he did with a lot of people.
the name Michael Jordan quietly started appearing everywhere. not as a commentator at first, but as someone who had apparently been paying attention long before anyone realized it. Because according to multiple accounts floating through NBA circles, Jordan didn't stumble into this conversation after the fact. He had already been hearing about Anthony Edwards long before the clip ever went viral, not through headlines or interviews, but through conversations inside league organizations where player development, mentality, and decision-making are discussed in far more detail than fans ever get to see, even if he never mentioned Edwards by name in a direct confrontation. Instead, he spoke in a way that felt more like a diagnosis than a reaction, describing what separates dominant scorers from players who still need to solve the deeper layers of the game. He pointed out how breaking a double team is not some advanced mystery reserved for genius-level players, but one of the earliest lessons every elite scorer must master if they want to survive at the highest level.
What was your relationship with Larry like?
We had a tight relationship.
He's in front office, though, when you were there, right?
Yeah, he was in front office. Crazy Larry story. It was after practice, right? And we were shooting around, and he's walking out. To this point, I've never seen him play. Like, I've never seen him shoot. I always had this vision of him from, YouTube videos and old clips like that. We're shooting, and he's like walking out of the gym about to leave, but the ball rolls over to him. So he picks the ball up, bro, shoots that motherfucker cash from 3, and he's in slacks, button down. Right. He got his loafers on. He could have fucked that up and airballed, and then I would have just had this whole different mindset about who he was.
Right.
Like, this was not like that.
Yeah.
Did he say anything to you after he made it?
No, bro, cashed that motherfucker, bro, and just walked out.
And that is where the tone of the entire discussion changed, because Jordan was not speaking from theory or commentary. He was speaking from experience that stretched over a decade of being double-teamed every single night by defenses designed specifically to stop him. In his view, the difference was never about whether players had skill or not, but whether they understood how to move without the ball, how to read pressure before it arrived, and how to force defenses to react instead of dictate. That is why his explanation carried a weight that went beyond opinion, because it came from someone who had already lived through every possible defensive strategy the league could invent, through performance, repetition, and results that could not be manufactured by marketing or highlight reels alone. That comparison did not attack anyone directly, but it raised a question that fans immediately picked up on, which is whether the current structure of the game builds competitors or simply celebrates potential too early. And just when the debate seemed like it could settle into another generation versus generation argument, the conversation took an unexpected turn into something far more revealing, because Jordan began reflecting on what actually shaped his mentality in the first place.
Garden, the play is coming, but he would tell you what's coming. And he says, if you trail, I'm going to trail into the lane and shoot a little floater. And he said, if you can pop, he said, if you try to get over the top, he said, I'm going to pop to that corner and bust a jumper in your face. I'm like, I'm all up on him. I got his shirt tail, I'm holding it. You know where I'm from? I'm from Gastonia. The ball comes in, he pops to the corner, and I'm running. He kind of waiting, He was in
He described a version of the game where playing basketball was not scheduled around branding or recovery protocols, but something that existed at the center of daily life, even when contracts technically allowed rest or caution. He even referenced how his contractual freedom to play anywhere, anytime reflected not recklessness, but pure attachment to competition, a mindset that made the sport inseparable from identity itself. That detail alone created a stark contrast with how today's players are developed, trained, and managed, where every movement is optimized, monitored, and structured for longevity. And whether that difference is good or bad depends on perspective. But Jordan made it clear that in his view, now surrounded by context, backlash, and reinterpretation, because fans began revisiting what was actually said and how much of it reflected confidence versus misunderstanding. The idea that Larry Bird was unskilled especially became the center of attention, not because it was new, but because it clashed so sharply with decades of evidence, stories, and firsthand accounts from players who faced him. And as more of those stories resurfaced, the conversation stopped being about opinion and started becoming about definition, specifically what skill actually means in a sport where physicality, intelligence, shooting, timing, and psychological control all intersect.
You talked about the trash talking that you got from Bird.
Yeah, Bird is...
What's the worst thing Bird said to you?
Sal, you better ask for help.
I was double teaming you. He said, y'all not double teaming me? I said, nah, just me and you. He said, Si, you better ask for help. He said, I'm telling you, bro, you better ask for help.
And what happened next?
He scored like 3 times in a row. I got 2 quick fouls. Bring Dennis on this moment. And he was like, I told you, Sal, you better ask for help. And it wasn't like he was talking shit. When I hear young guys or guys talk about Larry Bird now because it's something they want to talk about, it's the worst thing in the world. Not only did Larry Bird have to deal with the fact that he's playing against a whole bunch of black people.
That is where the Bird perspective becomes impossible to ignore, because former opponents consistently describe him not as the fastest or most athletic player, but as one of the most mentally precise scorers the game has ever seen. He would communicate what he intended to do, sometimes even pointing out where he planned to shoot, and still execute it successfully against defenders fully aware of what was coming. That level of confidence, combined with execution under pressure, created a form of dominance that did not rely on athleticism, but on control, repetition, and an almost uncomfortable understanding of timing and space. When those stories resurfaced alongside Jordan's comments, which is whether modern visibility sometimes replaces historical understanding. At some point, the conversation also expanded to include voices like Kevin Garnett, who reinforced the idea that the physical and tactical demands of earlier eras created a different kind of pressure, one that punished hesitation and rewarded adaptability in ways that are not always visible in today's faster-paced, spacing-heavy game. His comments did not dismiss current talent, but they added another layer to the argument Jordan had already been building, which is that survival in earlier eras required not just skill, but constant problem-solving under conditions that were far less forgiving.
He didn't appreciate what he just did and meet him outside or do this or do that, that type of thing.
So he's a tough, hard player that you actually, you get angry at sometimes.
Everybody does. I mean, it's a common thing. If anybody, if you had 273 professional athletes here, professional basketball player, and you say who's the dirtiest player in the NBA, I say 95% I say Lambeer or Larry Bird.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And yet, through all of this, what stands out most is not the controversy itself, but the way it exposes how quickly respect becomes optional in modern sports discourse. A single comment, even one made casually, can now trigger responses from legends, reshape narratives, and force entire generations into comparison mode, whether fair or not. And in this case, the discussion has moved far beyond Anthony Edwards or Larry Bird alone and into something much larger about how greatness is defined, who gets to define it, and whether modern confidence sometimes forgets the foundation it stands on. Because when Jordan finally stepped into the conversation in his own way, the message was not really about calling anyone out, because this was no longer just about one quote or one reaction. It was turning into a full-scale reflection of how quickly narratives can spiral when modern confidence collides with historical greatness. The most interesting part is that Anthony Edwards never set out to start a generational war. In most interpretations of his comments, the intention was closer to praising Michael Jordan while emphasizing how different the game looks today.
Feels like there's probably more stories about Bird that are told than any other player.
Because he was the best trash talker ever. So Leon Wood was one of my teammates. And we're sitting in the locker room getting ready for the three-point shooting contest. And I was kind of just talking to Leon, trying to calm him down, and we had all these three-point shooters in there. Bird comes in and says, which one of you is going to come in second place? So, like, which one of you going to come in second place?
That is exactly how Larry Bird ended up at the center of a conversation that was supposed to be about evolution, not comparison. Because once his name entered the discussion, the entire debate stopped being about modern skill sets and became a referendum on what skill actually means when stripped of era bias. And that is where things become uncomfortable, because every generation believes it plays the most advanced version of the game, even when evidence from the past suggests otherwise. Meanwhile, Michael Jordan's influence on this discussion continued to grow, not because he was actively pushing it, but because his perspective carried a kind of finality that few others can match. When he speaks about basketball, it does not sound like analysis, it sounds like lived experience compressed into a verdict. In that context, the idea of struggling with a double team was not an insult in his eyes, but a checkpoint, a moment every great scorer must pass through before they can be considered complete. Because at the highest level, scoring is not just about ability to create shots, but about understanding how defenses think, how they shift, and how they collapse under pressure when movement and anticipation are used correctly. That is where players like Jordan separated themselves historically, not just by scoring, but by turning defensive schemes into predictable patterns.
Larry Bird could play in any era, generation, and dominate. Same with Magic, Michael. It doesn't matter. You could plug them in the 60s and you could plug them in today's game and they would be just as dominant. People say Shaq wouldn't be as dominant in today's game where there's so much space and they're switching. Everyone plays 5 out, 0 in. And they're like, Shaq would not be as dominant. You guys are out of your damn mind. Shaq would dominate probably even more so. He would be fouling out Embiid in the Jokers. It would be ridiculous.
And this is where the conversation becomes more layered than it initially appears, because modern basketball actually produces more space, more freedom, and more scoring opportunities than any previous era. However, that increased space also changes how skills are evaluated, since players are no longer forced into the same physical constraints that defined earlier generations. So when comparisons are made across eras, they are not just comparing talent, they are comparing environments that reward entirely different types of decision-making. And despite those conditions, he maintained scoring efficiency and court control that forced elite defenders to rethink how they approached him entirely. As more footage and testimonials resurfaced, the narrative around unskilled began to collapse under its own weight, not because of opinion, but because of repeated historical evidence. Players who guarded Bird consistently described situations where knowing what was coming still did not translate into stopping it. That gap between awareness and execution is where elite skill lives, and it is the exact gap that often gets overlooked in highlight-driven discussions.
Larry Bird was the most feared guy when it came down to end-of-game situations. He's gonna get a bucket.
Over Kobe Bean?
Yes, Andrew Toney, Boston Strangler. Because Larry Joe Bird,
Greatest white boy of all time.
was one of the greatest clutch players ever, bro. Ever.
About buckets. Is Larry Bird better than KD?
Yes. Yes, to me he is.
Larry Bird better than LeBron?
Yes. To me he is.
Oh my goodness.
Larry Bird.
This Brian Sexual over here gonna say something different.
Didn't he 3 in a row?
Yes.
I don't know what's going on over
Larry
there.
Bird is the greatest white basketball player of time.
At the same time, the modern reaction to all of this has revealed something just as important about today's NBA culture, which is how quickly confidence is interpreted as comparison. Young stars today are encouraged to speak boldly, promote themselves, and embrace fearlessness in their messaging. That is part of the evolution of the league's entertainment value. But it also increases the chances that historical context gets flattened into simplified takes that do not fully capture what previous generations